Okay, here I am with Agent Steve and Agent Emily, and I'm fed up from hogging the limelight, so here's my face. Okay, here we go. Here we go. We're just about to enter the premises.
Right, today we've come to see Mr. Ken Morse, who lives in Bishopston. The night of the 19th of January 1983, he saw what appears to be a triangle going over the lane outside his house here. On the round about between 8 and 9 p.m. I believe. So we're going to go and see him now, and he can tell us exactly what happened. Yeah?
See what he's going to say for himself then. Mr. Morse.
Hello,
Ken.
Emily.
Remember?
Nice to meet you, Emily.
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
That's Lawrence.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine, thank you. Like to come in?
Thank you.
If you go round to the left, then.
Thanks.
So, here we are with Ken Morse in his sitting room where it all happened. So, Ken, could you explain to us exactly what happened on that night?
Right, okay. I don't remember much about the day, as I mentioned in the email, that it was just an ordinary day, and nothing eventful happened until after I put the children to bed and I'd come down to watch television, with the TV on, sat down there, and within a matter of minutes the power went off. Now, this was a fairly regular occurrence up here because at the time we had three-phase open wires. They used to blow about in the wind and short out, and obviously that was off for a while then. But on this particular night there was no wind, it was a clear night, and the power went off. So I did what I usually do under those circumstances. I used to get up, look through the window to look at the houses over on Old Way, to see whether they still had power on, and if they did, it was just a problem in our lane. But on this particular night, they were off as well. And whilst looking out to the window, my attention was immediately drawn to three brilliant bluish white lights forming a triangle that was slowly moving overhead. Now, I knew that from sort of things that I'd read in the past that this was one of the famous black triangles. Not that I could see it was solid, all I could see were the three lights. So I dared not take my eyes off it in case anything happened, so I moved over to this end of the window, opened the window frame and just listened, and there was absolute silence. Now, we're in a very quiet lane, we're quite away from the road, so we're used to not hearing anything.
So if we go to the window, could you point to the exact part of the sky where you saw it?
Yes, okay. So I was sitting there, so I would have just walked up to the window to look at the houses you can see across the village, on the other side of the road there, over in Old Way. And normally they've got one or two lights on in their houses there, which I can see from here. Now, on that particular instance, there was nothing visible, and I was probably standing reasonably close to the window when my attention was drawn up to that angle there. So as I was standing here looking out the window to see whether the lights were on over there, I noticed three bright white lights in a triangular formation that had just passed over the lane, and the back two lights lined up accurately with the run of our guttering there, which to me indicated that it was crossing the lane at 90 degrees. It just carried on very, very slowly over there, and I then moved to open the window to have a listen. And even now you can hear that there's virtually no sound at all. So I watched it from here for a while until it passed over the trees over there and then got fainter and fainter and fainter as it disappeared in the distance over to West Cross and ultimately out over Swansea Bay, presumably.
Okay, so this would have been
A west to easterly direction.
A west to east, yeah.
When you say there was lights on it, how bright were the lights? I mean, when you're looking at a jet, you mentioned before to us, I think, that there was, you see jets going across from London,
Yes.
New York, etc.
The jets have strobe lights on them, which are just barely visible.
Exactly.
These lights, I would estimate, are about as bright as Venus or the space station going over.
Okay, and about the same size?
About the same size. You could see it wasn't a spot of light. It actually had a physical shape. They appeared to be round.
I know it's difficult. Can you estimate the height of the object?
It's very difficult without any cross-reference to see. If anybody else had seen it, we would have been able to say that, taking sort of triangulation from different areas, we could have worked out the height, presumably. But I would say that going from the angle and the speed at which it travelled across there, initially I thought it would have to be at sort of commercial airline height, because it was going about the speed that a plane would be going. But then thinking about it, if that was at the same height as a commercial flight, the lights on it would have been brilliantly bright and very large, and that was based purely on the speed that it was travelling. Now then, considering that commercial flights go over at about 35,000 feet, I'm really reasonably certain that this was no way anywhere much higher than possibly 500 to 1,000 feet.
Okay. And you couldn't physically make any sort of physical form out of it at all?
No,
just the
nothing at all. It was exactly the same colour as the background sky.
But you would definitely say it was one object with three lights?
It seemed to be one object
Not
with three lights.
objects.
They didn't vary in distance apart at all.
Yeah.
They maintained the formation as they went across the field.
It was theorised at the time that what people were seeing on that night were planes being refuelled in flight. Do you think there's a possibility of that? That it could have been that?
I don't think so. If those were three commercial or three military planes even, I reckon that if they were at that sort of height, 35,000 feet, they'd have been well a mile apart. So there's no way they could be refuelling at that great distance. And they made no attempt to move together, which was what made me think that it was a solid object which I couldn't see. I was desperately hoping I could see something.
And the distance apart that the lights were, if it had been very high up in the sky, it would have been what size?
It would have been a mile by a mile by a mile, I reckon.
So you reckon it was a bit lower? It was quite a bit lower.
I'm convinced it was quite a lot lower than that, and moving at probably nothing more than about 30 to 40 miles an hour.
Completely silently.
Completely silent, yeah.
And then you observed it until it just disappeared out of view, yeah?
It disappeared out of view. It didn't do anything else. It just flew in a dead straight line, and it obviously got smaller and smaller and smaller. The lights maintained their relative positions as they went across the field, and it just disappeared behind the trees eventually.
And how long were you observing it for?
It seemed like hours, but I reckon it was about a minute.
Okay.
Was your heart thumping in your chest?
Oh yes, yeah, because I'd been a fan of sci-fi for years. I think it was not long after Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Do you think that could have affected your judgment, or do you think, was this a crystal clear,
It was crystal clear. I think I said in my email earlier that with my background as an engineer, I'm sort of trained to think logically and not put any sort of intonation or anything in the way I say things. I don't want to indicate that it was anything other than what I saw. It didn't do anything. It just moved slowly across the sky. There were no laser beams. There were
no flashing lights.
No flashing lights. Nothing at all.
How long was it between the time the electricity failed to when you actually noticed?
As long as it took me to get up from that seat there to look out to the window.
Yes, that's an important point. It coincided to the minute.
Yeah.
Or to the second even.
And what about the electricity coming back on? Do you remember when it came back on?
It was probably about half an hour later, I would think. because I think when the electricity goes off, they either have to get a man out to the local substation to reset the circuit breaker, or possibly they might have been able to do it remotely.
Yeah. Another important point in the paper the following day, the cause of the power failure, the power company said was probably caused by a branch of a tree coming down in strong wind and knocking out the power on the power line. But was there any wind that night?
No wind that night.
No, there wasn't.
No. So I was beginning to wonder, having seen the report in the Evening Post the following night, whether what I'd seen was something completely different from what everybody else had seen. And to the best of my knowledge, I've not met or heard of anybody else who observed this particular one going over Bishopston.
Right. And
I don't know whether it came in over Pennard or Kittle and then headed out over West Cross. But
we have plotted from witness statements and reports that there were dozens of reports of triangles going all directions around Swansea, and Llanelli, Gower, Port Talbot.
Yeah. So it's
sometimes at the same time. So it looks like there were several objects.
Yeah.
Doing different things, going in different directions at the same time.
Can we tie down to that particular night?
Only on the basis of what appeared in the Evening Post the following day.
Right.
Because I remember going into work and telling my colleagues that I'd seen something in the sky the night before. Oh yes, thought I was...
Ridicule?
Ridicule, yes.
And the power failure as well.
Yeah, and I told them about the power failure. I don't know whether that meant anything to anybody else.
Well, it was reported in the paper, so that's easy. Yeah. It helps you tie down the net.
I was aware that there is a link between power outages and
very common,
UFOs being observed. So I thought this was going to be my sort of X-File moment, but it was just rather boring really, that it just carried on.
It took 32 years for you to get on film.
Yeah, I did nothing.
So how long did they mercilessly taunt you for in work?
They just wrote it off, because they hadn't seen Evening Post at that point.
Yeah.
So it was first thing the following morning. But I think there was a little bit more leeway once the Evening Post had been seen, and that I wasn't the only one to have seen it.
Well, you're lucky then, because you should see some of the Neanderthals that I talk to. It's just like, the skepticism is breathtaking for some people.
Right, and you've never seen anything since?
Nothing
since.
It
was a one-off then?
One-off,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did say in my email that I've been watching the sky since I was about 11, and I desperately wanted to see a UFO. I was interested in astronomy. I could spot some of the constellations, so I was used to looking at the sky, and shooting stars, knew what those were. I've seen a comet. I've seen the space station go over. Now, if we had 3 space stations flying over in a formation, that would be roughly what I saw, because the speed at which the space station goes over, the speed at which planes go over, was the same sort of relative speed to what that seemed to be doing. But obviously this I think was probably less than 1,000 feet up. Planes are at 35,000 feet, and the space station is about 220 miles and doing 17,500 miles an hour or thereabouts. So you can see that obviously the higher they're up, even though they're appearing to be going at the same speed, because of the angle that you're looking at things and the fact that they're further away and they're travelling faster, they end up looking to be travelling the same sort of speed, which was why I was misled initially when I saw it to think that it was a commercial aircraft height, because I thought whatever those things are, they can't be as low as they look to be, but I think they were. So it seemed to be that it was a heavier than air craft, but which was just travelling at possibly 30 to 40 miles an hour.
Okay.
And that was it.
None of your other neighbours noticed anything or said anything?
No, there was no house next door at the time, and there was no lady living next door, so she wouldn't have seen anything anyway. But If the power hadn't gone off, I wouldn't have seen it because I wouldn't have been looking out the window.
That's right.
Right, yeah, exactly.
At the time, because we had got an overhead power feed here, we've got a circuit breaker on the incoming mains, and lightning would trip that out as well, but we'd hear that go crack, because it's a mechanical breaker switch. So if there was lightning and it went off, you'd hear the crack, say, all right, go and reset it and everything would be fine. But on this particular night, it was just a power cut. There was nothing to account for it, other than what I saw to the window afterwards.
Weather-wise, was it clear?
It was completely clear, yes.
Good night?
Yeah.
Did you see the stars that night?
Could see the stars, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was hoping that this object would fly underneath the star and block it out, so that I could then determine that it was a solid object, but unfortunately it didn't. And of course, the further away it got, it was the more difficult it was to see. Then.
Well, thanks for getting in touch with us.
My pleasure.
Another little piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah.
That's right. A few more to do, but thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much.
Yes,
So-
as Emlyn said, it's a piece of a jigsaw. There's been so many reports of these triangles. We're trying to get to trace as many people as we can, so we really appreciate you coming forward. It's good.
Well, it was at the time, because there were so many conflicting reports in the Evening Post, I thought, well, it's gone now, who do I report it to? I had no idea. And because mine was markedly different to what other people were reporting, I thought, well, perhaps I didn't see what I thought I saw, but I'm convinced I did.
And you said your wife was out on
She
the
was
night,
out that night, yeah.
So you couldn't share it with anybody.
No witnesses at all, no, other than me.
What did you say to her when she got home?
Well, I told her, and I don't think she believed me either, and with the passage of time, she's completely forgotten that I ever said it now.
How old are you then?
68 now.
68 now, so 30.
I'd be about 34, 35 at the time. Yeah. So I had all my faculties then. And
You haven't been drinking?
No, I hadn't been drinking. No, as I said, I think I just put the children to bed, but I've got no recollection of doing that because it was something that you do on a regular basis, and it wasn't until the power went off that made the night at all remarkable. But,
Well, it was a remarkable night.
it was, yeah.
It certainly
And
was.
You haven't had any reports from anywhere down Gower that might have seen the same sort of thing that night?
Not on that night, no, but we've had lots of reports from the Kittle and Bishopston area on different things, different nights.
And from various other parts of Swansea, Morriston, Sketty, Uplands.
On that night?
On that
Yeah.
night, yeah.
Was there any feelings of consternation at the time? You know, did you was it kind of like not going to sleep till 3 o'clock in the morning? You know, did it play in your mind?
Oh yes, it would have played in my mind because, as I said, it was not long after Close Encounters of the Third Kind had come out. So I was fully expecting a light show at some point from this, but it never happened. It was just 3 lights with no discernible body to it, and they just went in a straight line across the sky. But because of the speed they were moving, I'm convinced they were relatively low.
No, we really appreciate you coming forward because it's probably Swansea's mass sighting as well. It's the only one I would think, isn't it, that Swansea has had a mass sighting.
That we know of, yeah.
It's like our Phoenix lights in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
If that had carried on going, I reckon it would have gone out over West Cross and out into Swansea Bay.
And then towards Port Albert.
Headed, well, because you can't actually be accurate about which angle it went, I think it might have gone over towards Swansea Docks if it hadn't changed course.
Right.
But it appears that nobody else saw what I saw that night. So
Swansea Docks, Kilvey Hill, that area.
Yeah.
Well, Emlyn here has been logging the directions of all the sightings to see if they correlate with each other.
Yeah.
See if there's been several sightings in different positions over Swansea on the same night, around the same time.
Yeah.
So it looks like there was more than one object observed. So it was interesting to see if we can sort of plot them and see what direction they were travelling.
Yeah. I've got a vague recollection that in the Evening Post at the time there was a mention of a 14-year-old boy in Bishopston who was logging UFO reports.
Oh, in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neil Spring.
Was
that
it?
Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay. So you obviously know of him then.
Yeah, he's been in the press again recently. He's writing fiction now. There's a series called The Watchers, which it's made for TV now. So.
Right. Okay.
But at the time, yeah, he was doing quite a lot of research.
I had no idea who
in the
he
late
was
90s
or where he was, so I didn't try and contact him to report today. So because as I say, I was a little bit concerned that what I had seen being so different from what everybody else had seen, that I might not have been believed. So I thought, well, I'll just leave it and see what happens. And it took 30 odd years, and here it is.
What was going through your mind at the time?
Because of my background with astronomy and an interest in sci-fi, as soon as I saw three lights in a triangle, I knew what it was, and there were all sorts of things going through my mind. Am I going to be abducted was one of them.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I'd opened the window and I was looking straight up at it. It crossed my mind, is a laser beam going to come down and whisk me off somewhere? But nothing like that happened at all. It just flew over, and there was nothing really to report about it other than the fact that it was a triangular shape. And it also occurred to me whether it might have been some secret military craft that they were testing. But I thought, why would they do that over Bishopston on a winter's night, which was clear? That side of it didn't make any sense at all. Even though there were US military down in Brodie at the time, but in Pembrokeshire. But whether they would have had anything like that or not, I don't know.
Is it going to come back? Am I going to have to go through this again? Am I going to have to worry again?
Yeah.
Was there an anxiety?
I don't think I had any real anxiety about anything coming back, because I watched it until I could no longer see it. It had disappeared in the distance.
Yeah.
And it didn't fly off. It didn't do any aerobatics or impossible manoeuvres or anything.
Yeah.
And having seen it from just in front of the house and disappearing in the distance, I thought, right, that's it, that's over. And I mean, for a few nights I was looking out to the window to see if anything else was about, but gave up after a while, because in the last 30 odd years I've not seen anything else like it at all.
I asked this question before. Was there ever a yearning to sort of, like a few years down the line, I wish I could see that one?
Yes,
almost like reconfirming.
Yes, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, to confirm, because I felt that I was possibly the only one to see it because of the power cut.
Yeah.
That I was rather hoping that I could see something else, maybe something completely different.
Yeah.
But just to see it once in, was it 60 odd years, you've got no chance to confirm that anybody else saw it or what it was that you saw. So it'll forever remain a mystery as far as I'm concerned. But one I'm glad I experienced.
What are your deep down feelings? You deep down inside that you would rather. Do you really think that was real?
I'm convinced it was real. I've seen some reports on the internet that the three light in a triangle configuration is an atmospheric condition, and I thought, well, they were all perfectly aligned on the corners of a triangle.
Yeah, that theory just recently come out, isn't it?
Yeah, they didn't move, they didn't fluctuate at all. They had a constant white light, well, again, a bluish white light. And the thing was that it wasn't a downward facing spotlight, because as it disappeared into the distance I could still see them.
So you think you could have been at an angle?
It was, well, I think it might have been a sort of semicircular spherical light on the bottom of the craft, so that it was visible from directly underneath and from behind as they disappeared.
Wow.
Because the three lights went off into the distance, and even just before it disappeared, it still didn't look like stars.
So you could still see the
Still
three.
see the three.
Whereas if it was a flat triangle,
Mm,
you'd see it close up
yeah,
from underneath sort of thing, so you see
Yeah.
the three. But as it goes off into the distance, that angle,
it flattened.
it would flatten.
It flattened. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So again, one of those things. I can't confirm that it was solid, which I'm desperately sorry about, because I would love to have helped you with that. It definitely had no red lights on it, like some people have seen, and it definitely had no strobe lights or anything else other than
And
three.
the
bluish
configuration of the three
lights. Mm.
lights, did it change at all
No, it
to
maintained
suggest
it.
that they were three separate objects?
No, it maintained its shape until it had disappeared over
Right.
the houses over there in the distance.
Which suggests that they were on one object.
On a solid object, yes. Yeah.
Okay.